To understand the danger line, you have to understand what the debt-to-GDP ratio actually measures. Debt is how much a country owes. GDP is how much a country produces in a year its economic muscle. When debt is small compared to GDP, it's manageable. When debt grows faster than the economy, the ratio rises. When debt becomes larger than a country's GDP, that's when things get chaotic. Investors start asking questions. Can they pay it back? Will inflation explode? Will the government default? The ratio is like a national credit score. When it flips into dangerous territory, everything gets harder, borrowing becomes expensive, interest payments explode, and confidence evaporates. But here's the twist. There isn't one magical number for every country. Some can survive at 70%, some collapse at 50%, and some edge past 100% and keep going. But there is one pattern in the historical record. When countries cross a certain point, a point we'll reveal later, none of them have come back without major upheaval. The empires and nations that crossed the line. Let's look at history's warning signs. The Roman Empire didn't have modern GDP, but historians know its debt burden exploded as military spending ballooned and revenue fell. They spent more, taxed more, printed more money, devalued their currency, and eventually collapsed under the weight of economic pressure. France, before the Revolution, same pattern. Costs of war, extravagant spending, a stagnating economy, debt overtook output, confidence evaporated, and the entire system fell apart. Fast forward to the 20th century. The Ottoman Empire drowned in debt, dependent on foreign creditors who eventually seized control of its finances. Argentina crossed the line over and over, each time resulting in hyperinflation, bank runs, and government defaults. Greece hit the threshold in 2010 and spiraled into a full-blown financial crisis, losing control of its budget and handing sovereignty over to international lenders. Over and over, the same story repeats. Once the debt-to-GDP ratio crosses a critical level, nations don't just stumble, they unravel. The Japan exception, or warning? Now let's talk about Japan, the anomaly economists debate endlessly. Japan's debt-to-GDP ratio is over 250%, far higher than almost any other country in the world, and yet Japan hasn't collapsed. Why? 3 reasons. Their debt is owed mostly to their own citizens. Their interest rates have been near zero for decades, and their society accepts ultra-low growth as normal. But here's the catch. Japan hasn't recovered. It's been stuck in economic paralysis for more than 30 years. No growth, no inflation, no real wage increases. Japan didn't avoid the consequences, it just entered a slow-motion version of them. Their situation isn't a model of survival, it's a warning about what stagnation looks like. The United States and the edge of the threshold. Now let's talk about the United States. For decades, America stayed below the danger zone. But in the last 20 years, U.S. debt has exploded. Wars, tax cuts, stimulus packages, recessions, bailouts, COVID-19 relief, spending outpaced growth by a massive margin. Today, U.S. debt is larger than its GDP. And unlike Japan, the U.S. doesn't have a unified population of domestic savers financing the debt. It relies heavily on foreign buyers, China, Japan, Europe, hedge funds, central banks. If global confidence weakens, interest rates rise. As interest rates rise, the debt becomes even harder to service. And here's the mathematical nightmare. Once a country spends more paying interest than it spends on its military, infrastructure, or public services, the system becomes unstable. The U.S. is now dangerously close to that point. The critical number no country survives crossing. So what is the line? The number economists fear? The threshold no nation has historically crossed without severe consequences? It's roughly 120% debt to GDP. At that level, debt grows faster than the economy permanently. That means the debt snowballs. Interest payments grow faster than tax revenue. Borrowing becomes more expensive. Investors lose confidence. The currency weakens. Inflation rises. Governments either default, inflate their currency into worthlessness, or undergo a dramatic restructuring. The United States is hovering dangerously close to this number right now and trending upward. What happens when a nation crosses the line? When a country crosses the threshold, 4 things almost always happen. First, borrowing costs explode because lenders demand higher interest rates to compensate for the risk. Second, inflation rises as governments rely on money printing to cover shortfalls. Third, taxes increase and spending is cut, which slows the economy even more. Fourth, the country faces a crisis of confidence. Investors pull money out, citizens move savings overseas, people panic. Sometimes this results in a slow decline, like Japan. Sometimes it results in a sudden collapse, like Argentina. Sometimes it results in political upheaval, like France before the revolution. But every single time, the outcome is painful. Can the United States survive crossing the line? So the big question, could the United States break the pattern? Some economists say yes because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. Others say no, because reserve currency status doesn't erase math. Right now, interest on U.S. debt is the fastest growing part of the federal budget. Within a few years, America will spend more on interest than on defense, then more on interest than on Medicare, then more on interest than on everything except Social Security. When a nation's budget gets eaten alive by interest payments, collapse doesn't happen all at once, it happens in steps. Services get cut, programs shrink, infrastructure decays, debt rises faster, taxes increase, inflation sticks, growth slows, confidence drops, the spiral accelerates. It's not a doomsday scenario, it's simple arithmetic. The future, a fork in the road. Right now, the world is at a crossroads. Nations across the globe, not just the U.S., are approaching or crossing the 120% line. Italy, Japan, France, the U.K., and several others are nearing their own thresholds. The next decade will reveal which countries confront their debt and which try to outrun it. But history teaches one clear lesson. No country can outrun compound interest forever. If the United States, or any major nation, crosses deep into the danger zone, the consequences will ripple across the planet. Markets will shake, currencies will shift, power will transfer. A new global order could emerge from the aftermath. The final message. The debt-to-GDP ratio is more than an economic statistic. It's a warning bell, a measurement of how close a country is to losing control of its financial future. And the line no country survives crossing is approaching faster than most people realize. But here's the good news. History also shows that nations that act before they cross the line can pull themselves back from the edge. It requires discipline, reform, innovation, and political courage. The question isn't whether the math is real. It is. The question is whether nations will take it seriously before it's too late. Because the debt-to-GDP line isn't just a number. It's a reflection of priorities, decisions, and the long-term survival of entire economies. And once a country crosses it, there is no turning back.